Hello and welcome to Grouchy Geeks episode 15. My name's Steve, my co-host is Scott.
Hello.
This is our special episode. This is our anniversary, our 10th anniversary episode.
I know, who could have believed that after 10 years we'd still be just talking crap on the internet and people would be still listening to us.
I know.
That's the really surprising thing.
It's not just me downloading it and you downloading it anymore to get the numbers up. It's someone else is actually doing it.
That's right.
10 years. I didn't think we would have done this long, to be honest. I thought we would have stopped years ago.
Yeah, I have to say this demonstrates a level of focus that is very unusual for me.
Yeah. We kind of slowed down at one point. I think we were going to stop, and then we just carried on doing it again again. So, yeah.
Yes. So very much like Doctor Who, we've gone through several incarnations.
True.
So the show that we're recording now most definitely isn't anything like the shows that we first started doing. Thank God. So yeah, we've gone through several different versions. We've rebooted a few times, but yes. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Here's to the next 10 years.
Oh, dear. Unless, I wouldn't say no, because you never know what's going to happen. So, yeah, we did have to reboot our numbers, sadly. So I'm not sure what number we'd be on now, but this is 15. But we'd be, I don't know. I'm going to say over 100. Let's pretend that's that's the case. Anyway, right. Enough of that. So my first point is to say, how is the Scott's exercise regime? We need like a jingle.
It's really bad lately.
Oh, dear
it's because I've basically been ill for about 3 weeks now with all different things. So I'm trying to keep the coughing to a minimum, but I'm getting over a cold. Before that, I wasn't very, very well with something else, and that's fine. Like that happens. But what I need to do now is kind of get back into it. Like, it's understandable that I haven't been able to do it, but now I'm sort of mostly 100% better. But I'm a little bit out of the habit again, so I need to rediscipline myself, I think.
Yeah.
So it's been bad lately for understandable reasons, but I need to get back on the horse and discipline myself to keep going. So not good. But yes, the true test will be whether in a month's time it's still bad.
Yes.
And I'm hoping not, because everybody's keeping me honest.
Good. Well, as Rocky said, it's not about how hard you get hit. That's how you can get up and keep going forward. That's it. That's
exactly.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Well, I've been doing...
Eye of the tiger, baby.
This is it. I've been doing better lately. I've started running outside regularly now. I switched app because the Sidekick cast told me, boys, to get on this other app, and then you can send messages to each other and keep each other honest in a way, by sort of saying, oh, what have you done this week? And you can see the distance and people can comment on your progress.
Is that Runkeeper by any chance?
It's a Map My Run, I think it's called.
Right.
I was on something else and I switched to Map My Run. And I was doing quite well. I've been running outdoors. I've just got past the stage of the loop that I do. I can now do it without stopping, which was good. And sort of, walk a bit, run a bit. I got to the phase where I did the whole thing running non-stop. So that was definitely improvement. It was my personal best time. I actually started to enjoy it for the first time. And I seem to have damaged a ligament in my left knee.
Oh, no.
So I was supposed to run the other day and I didn't because it's still hurting. And I've left it another 3 days and it's still hurting now. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's not just soft muscle, it's something else. So I'm also going to have to backslide because I'm going to go on holiday soon. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be another week of rest to hopefully get better. And then when I come back, it's going to be start from the bottom again. Lost the level of fitness, lost my progress, but we'll see what we do.
You could be running along the beach, like is it Rocky 3 where they There's the very homoerotic bit on the beach between
Apollo Creed and Rocky Balboa. It's Rocky 3 with Clubber Lang. Well done.
That's right.
Now that you've watched them, you get all these references, which I like, because you hadn't watched them until recently.
Like less than 12 months ago.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's us getting older, 10 years on, and exercise needs improvement. Mm-hmm. Right, let's get on some news.
I've been trawling things and I really couldn't find anything. There's a couple of things that I've watched that I'm going to mention. But if you can enlighten us with anything, that would be great, because it really did seem like it's been a slow news few weeks.
For sure, yeah. So over the weekend was the D23 Expo. This is the Disney World Expo thing where they have... It's almost like a giant convention in a way with lots of stuff going on. So they announce film and TV and projects to do with the resorts. Things like they've announced the Star Wars world that they're going to be doing in Disney World in Orlando, and there's going to be like a Star Wars themed hotel, and it's going to be very immersive and this sort of thing. So we think the hotel's going to open in 2019, so a couple of years yet, but they gave some more information about that. They also did this Disney Legends thing, sort of their equivalent of heroes that they wanted to honour, who either had ties to Disney or they just thought were exceptional people in the media, whether they're actors, presenters, creators.
Right.
So Stan Lee was honoured for his creativity, and obviously now Disney owns Marvel Studios and Marvel Comics, so they were honouring him. And they also honoured Jack Kirby, which was nice, which I thought was lovely. And Jack Kirby's son was there to collect the award and say a few words on behalf of his father. And they did like a show reel of each sort of person showing some of the stuff. And Stan's was after the Jack Kirby one, and he got up on stage and he said, first of all, I just want to thank them for honouring Jack and for showing that. And I got to see some footage and stuff, because I haven't obviously seen him in a long, long time. Because he died quite a few years ago. So that was really quite touching. But they honoured some other interesting people, like Whoopi Goldberg was honoured for her kind of contributions to film. And Oprah Winfrey was honoured as well for her contributions to media, to education, to healthcare, to kind of just television in general, or things she's done for schools she set up for enterprise leaders, for young women in South Africa, and all this kind of stuff. So it was a mixed bag of patting themselves on the back for some of the film stuff, but also, showing great heroes and legends from the media business, which I thought was very nice.
Yeah, I mean, if I was those people, I'd feel quite honoured, but I'd also be slightly worried because, Disney currently owns like 95% of everything in entertainment. and if they're, if they're shining a spotlight on you and going, we really admire your work, then it seems like, you're only a few weeks away from a hostile takeover. I don't know how you could do a hostile takeover of Oprah Winfrey, but if there's a way for Disney to do it, then I think they're probably going to accomplish it.
Yes, for sure. So what have you watched? You said you've done some watching of stuff lately.
Yeah, so we've talked about this a couple of times on the show already, but I finally got round to watching Alien Covenant.
Oh dear. Okay.
Have you seen it? I know your friend's seen it. Have you seen it?
No, I've not. I've not put myself through it. But go on.
It's excruciatingly bad. It really is.
Okay.
This is a very, very minor spoiler. If you haven't seen the movie, don't worry about it. But there's a scene in it, I'm not kidding, where Michael Fassbender snogs himself, and that's one of the highlights of the film. It would have been a better film if it was just 2 hours of that rather than what they put out there. I mean, we mentioned this in the last couple of episodes as well. I've kind of withdrawn from social media. Not that I was ever particularly social on social media anyway. But even I picked up my phone literally after about 10 minutes of Alien Covenant being on, and I was just like, surfing the internet.
Wow.
Glancing over at it, it was really bad, which is a shame because there's a nugget of a few good ideas in there. It's part of this long. I guess we're going to get into being grouchy old geeks and what things are like today compared to 10 years ago soon. Yeah. But it just seems to be this trend now where you get a whole bunch of films that look fantastic, but make absolutely no sense at all. Like it's not even. You don't even have to kind of hunt around for the plot holes. It's just beautiful nonsense. But it isn't. It is nonsense. It could completely. Anyway, yeah. So that's not so great. I can't remember whether I said this in the last show, but I've seen Wonder Woman, which I loved.
I've seen it as well.
So what did you think?
I think it's the best DC film that they've done from the new batch, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but it's not up against pretty stiff competition, is it?
This is the thing. So it's what we've had so far has been pretty poor, and this is the best of them. It's the most loyal to the character in terms of there's nothing there that sticks out and it makes me think they just don't understand the character. That was really, really good. I thought Gal Gadot was great. I think all of the stuff on Themyscira was great. I'm not going to spoil it, but when they revealed who the villain was, I actually laughed, and I don't think I was supposed to.
I thought it was pretty comical as well.
I tittered and thought, this is sick. No, that's not right. And really? I was like, oh, no, it is. I just laughed because of the person who it was. They brought in lots of side characters and then didn't do anything with them. So Etta Candy, who's her friend and sort of sidekick, who's in the comics and does a lot of stuff, didn't really do much with her. She had a very, very small bit, and then she was gone, and then she was on the radio at one point, and then that was it. They brought in the chief, they brought in the kind of hustler guy, and they brought in the marksman, who's lost his will and lost his nerve, and then they don't do anything with his story arc. I thought they were going to, he'll make the shot, and then he's had like an arc. Didn't do anything with it. Nope. So that was a bit weird. It's a good film, but I think it could have been a lot better. I was hoping it would be amazing, but I just thought it was good.
You obviously know a lot more about the history of Wonder Woman than I do, and going in with that sort of level of ignorance, I really liked it. I thought it was great. There's a real bad habit, and it happens at the end of Batman versus Superman, and actually loads of superhero films. It happened at the end of Wonder Woman, where 90% of the film, it's a fairly down to earth war movie. This is in the trailer. She literally goes over the top out of the trench and starts fighting with people, and it's sort of washed out. It's not like super crazy colourful and stuff like that. And if to the extent that you've got Wonder Woman fighting in the First World War, it feels fairly grounded. And then towards the end, it just turns into like disco lighting.
It's true.
That's the only thing, and it's exactly the same thing happens at the end of Batman versus Superman. It's just so many bright lights and explosions that you can't relate to it. One person going over the top out of a trench, and trying to take out a machine gun emplacement. You can relate to that, right?
Yes.
Because there's kind of there's a level of reality there that lets you engage with that. But when it turns into just this CGI, disco, that's the only word I can think to describe it.
Yeah.
It just switches me off completely. So apart from the end of the movie, where it just kind of lost for me what was making it good up till that point, I thought it was great. I really, really liked it.
Yeah, I enjoyed the more grounder stuff. Yeah, for sure. So since we're talking about things we've seen, I went to the cinema recently and saw Baby Driver.
Oh, so I've got tickets to go and see that on Friday. I'm going to the cinema a lot more now because we found a cinema near us where you pay a bit more. It's like license. You have like a table and they'll serve you drinks and stuff like that. And to be frank, there's no riffraff.
You told me, I remember.
Yeah. So Yeah, so we went to see Guardians of the Galaxy 2 this morning, and we've got tickets for Baby Driver on Friday. So I've not seen it, but I've heard it's awesome.
It's very, very good. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything about it and say, if you've seen the trailer, that gives you a very good flavour of the film. There's obviously more in there. It works really, really well. I was worried the music would get in the way and would intrude, but it doesn't. It blends very, very seamlessly. And I really, really enjoyed it and came away happy with the experience. Sometimes you can go into a film and they give all the best bits away in the trailer as well, and you think, well, I've seen the whole film now. And there's always that fear, but I didn't have that when I came out. I felt like, I'd got a full experience without being spoiled. So yes, that's definitely really, really good. Quick bit of TV news. So I think I've spoken about the comic a few times before, Lock and Key by Joe Hill. They did a pilot a while ago, and it didn't get picked up, and then it just kind of seemed to die a death. They're now shooting another pilot, someone completely different, brand new cast, brand new sort of people. Joe Hill's involved. I think he wrote the pilot, this time. So they're going to be shooting it very, very soon, is what they said, and it's going to be shown on Hulu, which I don't know where it'll appear in the UK, but in saying that, we weren't sure where The Handmaid's Tale would turn up, and then Channel 4 bought The Handmaid's Tale. So maybe someone, a Channel 4 or another channel over here will pick up Lock and Key when it airs. But it's good news that it's definitely going ahead now.
Yeah, and Hulu do have a presence in the UK. Like, you can take out a Hulu subscription over here. It's not, it's definitely not the same sort of level as Netflix or anything like that. But
yeah.
But they do have you can subscribe to them within the UK.
Yeah. So we should hopefully get. I think it'll probably be next year, but we should be getting at least a pilot or a few episodes of Lock and Key next year.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I remember reading. I haven't read as much of the comic as you have, but I've read some of it, and I thought it was awesome.
Yes, for sure. Do you have any other bits of news?
No, that was it from me.
Okay. A couple more bits from me. So, The Punisher, the Netflix show starring John Benthel, who was obviously in the second season of Daredevil, and he was so good. He stole the scenes he was in. He was fantastic. They greenlit a spin-off show with him. The first season of The Punisher has now finished filming, and it's going to air later this year. And they've been talking about the mood of the program, of the whole series, and saying it's obviously very different to all of the others because there are no powers at all. Because Daredevil has some powers; he's not as overt as some of the other people. Same with Luke Cage. Same with they're all very street level. Whereas the Punisher, he's just a bloke. He's just horrifically driven, determined, gun-toting maniac. But he's completely human. So the flavour of the show is going to be different and reflect that adult nature of the violence that came with his scenes in Daredevil. So we get the Defenders first, which starts in August, and then it's probably going to be, I'm going to guess, October, November, we might get the Punisher. So, but the Netflix Marvel shows are just phenomenal. I mean,
yeah, they're incredible.
I admit Iron Fist wasn't as good, but when we come on to the main, it's like 10 years ago, if that had aired, that would be the best thing in the world ever. Now we're so spoiled, we can just kind of go, nah, that was okay compared to X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's just crazy. But yeah, these Netflix shows have just been absolutely bonkers. I can't.
Yeah, they've been incredible. I mean, let's be honest, it's going to be difficult for him to be Dolph Lundgren as the Punisher, but I'm sure he'll do his best.
Yeah, I'm confident he'll do well. Yeah. Just a feeling. My last bit of news is the Coen brothers are doing a Western TV series.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, we know they do these really interesting films that are always very, very different. So they're doing a 6-part Western TV show with lots and lots of big famous names in, called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. The cast include people like James Franco, Tyne Daly, Stephen Root, and these are big names. Don't know much more about it than that, other than it's going to be weird, I would think, given that it's a Coen film. Go on, Joe.
Yeah, I would expect so. I mean, they're famous for doing all sorts of off the wall things, and some of them comedic, some of them much less so. No Country for Old Men, is definitely not a comedy, but it has its own sort of unique style. It's interesting that they're going into TV now because obviously, one of the things that they're most well known for is Fargo, which recently became a TV show that they weren't obviously they were involved in to some extent, but they weren't heavily involved. But the TV show sort of inherits the same off the wall humour as the movie. So you can kind of, it's not a leap to think, oh well, if this is something that's working really well on TV, let's just go to the source and get them to do something. So that sounds sounds awesome.
So yeah, lots of stuff going on, but not a heavy news week this month so far. Right, let's crack on with the main.
More bad news on Wall Street today as market.
Well, Scott, seems like we're all in a bit of a pickle. A wave of financial tomfoolery has been unleashed upon us. But fear not, these corporate mischief makers will meet their match. For today you are not just Scott. Today you are Great Scott.
Okay, welcome back. As we said at the start of the episode, it's now been 10 years, believe it or not, since we started recording. So we're going to take a little bit of a look back and a little bit of a look forward. We're going to try and see what the state of geekdom was 10 years ago when we first started doing that, doing this, comparing it today, and then hopefully getting out the crystal ball and making a few predictions of what life is going to be like in 10 years' time. Given how much things have changed in the last 10 years, I think we're going to fail miserably at that. But we'll see how we go on. Yeah. So before we talk about sort of geekdom so much, tell me where were you and what were you doing 10 years ago, and how have things changed for you? Because definitely in terms of becoming a famous geek, things have changed enormously. So tell me about you 10 years ago and you now to start with.
10 years ago, I was living in a different part of England. I was living in Yorkshire. We're in our first house back then. I was working a full-time job back then and commuting a lot. But I was also listening to a lot of podcasts. That was the bonus, I think. Podcasting was just starting to take off then, 10 years ago. One of the first shows that I listened to was Geek Syndicate. And there's another podcast called Word Balloon, an American podcast that's focused primarily on comics, which I still listen to as well. Yeah, so I was driving a lot more. I was working full time. I was into a lot of the same sort of stuff as I was now.
And you were writing but unpublished at the time?
Yes, 10 years ago I was trying to get published. I would have been on whatever another novel number. Could be novel number 5 or 6 or 7, I don't know. But 10 years ago I was trying to get published, writing it, sending it off, submitting it to agents, going to events, trying to glean as much information as I could from people online. Yeah, so not too drastically changed from where I was 10 years ago. But what about yourself? Where were you?
So I was living in Norwich, and for the majority of the podcast, I was continuing to live either in Norwich or in that area. I was working in academia, and I just started listening to podcasts around about that time. So I had a job where I could listen to stuff all the time, and I was listening to not so much things about TV shows and movies, but lots and lots of podcasts about computer games, which was probably my prime interest at the time. And since then, like you, I live in a completely different part of the country now. I've moved out of academia. I'm doing something that's still sort of very much to do with computers, but working in a completely different field. And yeah, but still largely the same person. But then we met at Bristol Comic Con.
That's right.
10 years ago when you were, and I can actually see this comic here. I'll probably won't name it because you might never forgive me, but you would but I still have a copy of it.
Yeah.
So when you're as big as Stephen King, that's going to be my pension.
Okay,
Basically,
okay.
you were manning a table.
Mm-hmm.
You had a sign up saying, "Ask us about comic book podcasts," and I did. We decided to start doing a show ourselves, having so something that is definitely unusual for us compared to probably most people that were doing podcasts is we literally didn't know each other until we started recording.
It's true.
We met at Bristol, had hung out, probably had a couple of pints in the bar or something like that.
It was
and
me,
then just
you, Dave, Barry, my friend Steve. There were some other people there as well. Stacey, I think Stacey was there. There's quite a few people there. We sort of met, had a drink, and chatted about stuff.
Yeah. So, but we really, it's not like when Barry and Dave started recording, they've known each other since they were like 10 or something like that, haven't they?
Yeah.
Whereas we were complete strangers, and yet we managed to talk for hundreds and hundreds of hours about Babylon 5. Yeah, just general nonsense. So what about what was? So I know that you've come up with some interesting things that were out around that time. So what were the big things happening 10 years ago?
So TV back then, some of the big shows that I was watching were things that were just starting. I remember 10 years ago. So we had things like Chuck. That's aired in 2007.
Right. Wow.
A favourite of mine, Burn Notice, which I absolutely love. I love that show. And it ran for 7 seasons, so it only wrapped up, in 2014-ish or thereabouts, 2013. Damages with Glenn Close. This was the first time such a big-name star had taken the lead in a TV show. Yeah. It's fairly common now, but 10 years ago, it was pretty unusual for a Hollywood A-list actress to be the main person on a show. Moonlight was airing. This was a TV show about the kind of vampire guy who was helping a cop. It was one of those many straight cop and quirky person, and that was the cop working with a vampire in this case. The Guild was airing 10 years ago. I think it was just starting. This is the Felicia Day web TV series that ran for about 4 or 5 years. That was one of the many things that led to her career taking off. And the IT Crowd was just starting as well, which is a British sitcom about 3 people working in an IT support room.
Honestly, not a single one of those things would I have said was 10 years old.
Well, here's some of the films, and this gets really scary. Okay, No Country for Old Men, which a Coen film. Spider-Man 3 with the emo dancing Tobey Maguire.
Oh God, yeah, the one that needs to be like, just forgotten about.
Yeah, and yet that was 10 years ago, and yet I can still see the horrible images burned into my brain. Transformers 1 was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Incredible.
That they're still making them. There Will Be Blood, one of your favourites, with the who's now retired. What's his face? Triple Barrel.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, he's now retired from acting, I think.
Yeah.
Zodiac was on, which is the about the Zodiac killer. Hot Fuzz was 10 years ago.
Wow, incredible! And you just mentioned Baby Driver, so both directed by Edgar Wright.
Yeah. Gone Baby Gone was 10 years ago, which is a fantastic crime film. It's absolutely brilliant. It's starring Casey Affleck, and I believe Ben Affleck directed it.
Yeah.
Ocean's 13 was out. Sunshine, which is the Danny Boyle film. And
a movie that a lot of people really love it, but I've always kind of struggled with it a little bit.
It's all right. And 30 Days of Night, the vampire in the frozen north kind of thing.
Yeah, based on the comic.
By Stephen Niles, yeah, that's right. Technology 10 years ago. The iPhone 1 came out.
Wow.
And the Wii, which sounds bizarre because I think, the Wii can't be that old. No, it is. It's 10 years old, the Wii.
That's incredible.
I mean, they were losing at that point. Nintendo were trying to battle, because you go head-to-head with Microsoft and the Xbox and with Sony with the PlayStation, and they weren't getting anywhere. After all the kind of the NES and the Super NES and all that kind of thing, they're just in the Cube. I think the GameCube was the last one Or was there one after that? I can't remember. But then they thought, right, we've got to do something different because we can't compete head to head. And so the Wii came out, and it was so different to anything else. It was interacting with the kind of live stripe across your TV. And then they all kind of copied it with the cameras and stuff, didn't they?
Yeah, it was huge. It was such a brilliant idea, and it very famously sort of broadened out gaming in the sense that you were getting Wii's installed in like old people's homes and things like that because it was so so relatable and easy to use, and it got people up and moving and things like that. And interestingly enough, one of the other things that has really broadened out gaming for people is the iPhone and smartphones in general. Nowadays the majority of people that play games and identify as gamers are women, and the average age is much higher than it used to be, in part because we've all got these devices that it's really easy just to install a game on your phone for nothing and start playing it. So that's probably a big difference, actually, how much broader all of the things that we were interested in 10 years ago have become in terms of the sorts of people, the person that they appeal to now. Yeah. It's a much... all of the things that we talk about and all the things that we were talking about back then are much less niche than it felt like they used to be at the time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been reading fantasy my entire life, and until things like Lord of the Ring films came along, and then Game of Thrones on TV, fantasy was seen as this sort of strange little kind of thing. And now the number of people talking about it, the number of TV shows, the number of films in that genre has opened up massively because of something else. And as you say, these other things, gamers now, people on tablets, which is 10 years ago, tablets weren't a thing at all. No. You could get them, but they were very, very expensive. There was almost no games or any kind of common technology or any kind of common software. It wasn't nearly as ubiquitous as they are now. But yes, it was the dawn of the smartphone, really, in 10 years ago.
Yeah, incredible.
Only 10 years, wow.
Yeah. And actually, that's kind of one of the big changes for both fans and creators as well. That when thinking back to that first Bristol, when we met, you would wander around Bristol, and there was lots of people there that were selling relatively professionally done comics in terms of in colour and the printing and stuff like that. But actually there was loads of, back then there were loads of people that were trying to sell stuff that they'd literally just photocopied.
True.
Because and the only place that they would be able to sell their creations were at Bristol Comic Book Convention. There was Bristol and there was Birmingham, and that felt kind of like all there was at the time. But actually now, there are so many ways, if you're a creator, and it doesn't matter what you're a creator of, be it, comics or music or games or anything like that, actually it's so much easier to get your stuff out there and onto a platform where people can read it now. The barrier between people being able to create something and people being able to view that content it is almost not there at all anymore. Whereas actually 10 years ago, that really wasn't the case at all. If you wanted to create a comic and get it out there, either you had to get it published by somebody, or you were having to sort of print it out yourself and then get a table at Bristol. Whereas nowadays, with digital publishing and everything, that's you obviously you still have people printing their stuff and having tables at conventions, and that's brilliant and it's fantastic, but they're not just limited to selling to the people that just happen to be at that convention at the time. They can sell their stuff worldwide now, which seems like almost the biggest difference that we've had in the last 10 years. That this breaking down of barriers between people being able to engage with their audience and get their products out there for an audience to enjoy. I
mean, 10 years ago, the internet really was a place where you could find people with common interests that didn't live locally to you, and you could build your own community by saying, I'm a fan of Babylon 5, and I met you at a convention and you like Babylon 5, but if I wanted to talk to someone else, I'd have to go and find them, whereas with the internet, they didn't have to be local, they could be anywhere, and that was the first kind of thing. And then the second thing, as you say, is the content. With the dawn of smartphones and then tablets soon after, and then digital comics came along, and they tried to do motion comics, and they were such a failure because they were neither fish nor fowl. They weren't an animated thing, and they weren't a comic. I mean, a comic is something that takes place in imagination, and this was trying to be more interactive and less. It just didn't work for me, and they didn't take off in the way that people expected to. But once Comixology started, and other kind of digital libraries in the same way as digital books, I mean, 10 years ago there wasn't such a thing as an e-reader. I don't think it was nearly the level, and there again, the level that we have now. We have specific devices that are made just to read ebooks, not for any other purpose, and the price came down and down and down until you can get one now for probably 40 quid, 50 quid. But
yeah, so I have an Android Kindle, and I paid £40 for it.
There you go,
brand new. It's astonishing.
Yeah, and it would have cost you a lot more back then. I mean, a tablet, if you could get it, would have been like £500-600. There was no such thing really as e-readers, and now books, they're again digital books. They thought that would kill the paper market, and it didn't. They thought digital comics would kill the comic book shop, and they didn't, because it's in an extra way, and people double dip, and people find new audiences for their content. And as you say, comic creators can suddenly say, right, I've got all these conventions where I can go to and have physical copies, but now I can put it on this online version of, iTunes essentially for my content. It doesn't have to be just on my web page and hoping someone stumbles across it. And then, it can be read by people around the world, which is just so bizarre. And YouTube, I wonder where that was 10 years ago. Nowhere near what we have now.
Yeah, I think so. So YouTube, I think, is just over 10 years old.
Right. So, I mean, now you have people who are millionaires by creating content for free on YouTube. These are people who produce videos that other people watch, and they're millionaires. They're internet celebrities, which sounds such a bizarre thing for me to say still to this day. I understand how it works. I'm still very, very baffled by the idea of that people can make that much money for doing some very bizarre things. Like one guy, like the top guy on YouTube, doesn't he just play games and people watch him?
You're talking about PewDiePie, yeah. Who makes an astonishing amount of money. So he's sort of broadened out, and he's doing more sketch type things now and stuff like that. But yeah, that's exactly how he started out, and yeah, you get some fabulously wealthy people just out there, talking to the internet. But then again, these people have audiences that are bigger than most TV networks nowadays. Back in the day, the most expensive pilot ever made was the Lost pilot.
Yeah,
and I can't remember how many millions of people watched it, but nowadays, the number of people that watch the Lost pilot is significantly lower than the audience of a lot of these people that are on YouTube. So yeah, it's extraordinary, and I subscribe to a bunch of them, and I watch quite a few. I don't watch PewDiePie, but there's a well-known gamer out there called Boogie2988 who I always watch, who has, I think, just over 4 million subscribers, and gets a few million views whenever he talks about stuff. And that's one of the things that I think would have been impossible to predict.
Yes,
it's and that's one of the things that's really interesting. It's probably, so I just checked, and YouTube came out in 2005. So it was still in 2007. It was still in its infancy, but I think it's kind of easy, not easy, but I think in 2007 you could have predicted, based on the back of YouTube, things like streaming services like Netflix and stuff like that becoming big, where instead of going to Blockbuster to get a DVD, everything's just going to be streamed over the internet. But actually, it's how people. It's easier to predict technology than it is to predict the ways that people are going to find to use it. And I think that's one of those cases it would be really hard to predict, that actually there'd be a significant number of people out there that are making livings by just talking I was going to say just by talking rubbish to people on the internet, but
Hello!
I kind of feel
We're missing out
suddenly
somehow.
realise this is the pot calling the kettle black.
A little bit. But the weird thing is that you now have the kind of the turnaround thing where people would produce content in the hope of getting not only subscribers, but they'd attempt to get people to support them. They'd try and get business to say, sponsor my show and I'll talk about your product and blah, blah, blah. Now it's gone full circle where some of these internet celebrities, for lack of a better term, businesses come to them. So I know, because of my work, I do stuff with marketing in my day job, that there's an internet person called Zoella, and she targets a very specific audience of sort of young, predominantly it's young girls between like 8 and 14 or something like that. It's a certain age group. And she talks about makeup and hair but then she's broader now, and now she's a bit older. The audience have aged with her. She does young adult novels, and she reads all the times. That's just something she did herself, and then she started bringing it into her show. Mm-hmm. And now she's done this thing with W.H. Smith that came to her and said, okay, you pick 6 books or 8 books. We'll do Zoella's young adult selection of 2016. We'll promote it in the stores, blah, blah, blah. You talk about them, you get the authors on, you review them, and there you go. And that's what she's done. And then the obviously the books sell incredibly well. W.H. Smith do well out of it. Zoella does well out of it, out of views. She did like baking cupcakes one day. I know this because I had to do it for a test at work. And there's all these things in the background. So all the ingredients were supplied by certain supermarkets. So the brands were showing. There was a table lamp behind her that in the notes underneath was listed. And they sold out. It was like something called like a rabbit something table lamp from, I don't know, Asda or something. They sold out. She never talked about it. She never mentioned it. She never looked at the lamp. But they sold out for like a month or 2 months because people have watched this video gone, oh, I like that. What's that? There's the link. Click it. Go and buy it. Just like product placement.
Yeah, that's just extraordinary, isn't it?
It's just, I could never have predicted that level of companies seeking internet celebrities for them to say, right, can you do this for us?
And then at the same time, sponsorship has gone on to a more personal level as well with things like Patreon, where actually somebody can say, if you like what I do, then you can just subscribe, for $1 a month or a few dollars a month, and you might get some exclusive content. But it's just a way of sort of individually supporting these people. And I don't do that with many people, but I do that for some of the people whose stuff that I really, really like. And it's just a way of sort of showing your appreciation and your support. So at the same time, you've got these huge companies coming and knocking on the door of some people saying, can we work with you? But at the same time, you as an individual can to some extent also be a sponsor of these things and show people in some way that you appreciate their work and what it is they're doing.
Yeah, very bizarre. Very bizarre. So do you want to talk about the future?
Sure, yes.
And how wrong we're going to be.
Yes. So I'm going to make my first bold prediction, I think. And you can we can just listen back to this in 10 years' time when we will know how wrong I am. I'm going to say that within the next 10 years, people are going to be bored of superhero movies, and they're going to circle the drain at some point between now and 2027.
Right. Okay.
I don't know what you think to that claim. I don't know. Do you think? I think they're going to die a death in the next few years.
I think the numbers are going to decrease. I think it's going to reach. I don't want to say saturation point because I don't think that'll ever happen. I think the popular reader, the popular viewer, the popular TV person, it will move on to something else. I think you could be right. I think the numbers will decrease. At the moment, Marvel are putting out 2 or 3 films a year. Everybody's turning everything into a franchise and tying it all together. I think that will die a death as well. And I hope, in some ways, that films will move back towards the more individual, different, unique, lower budget films, but there'll be more of them. And some of them will be rubbish, and some of them will go straight to Netflix, and some of them will be fantastic and remembered for a long time. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the numbers will decrease. I don't think Marvel will ever stop producing TV or DC TV or film content whilst it's obviously profitable for them. But they could reduce the numbers to make it more of a special occasion than this summer, this film, this autumn, this film, this spring.
Yeah.
This film. It's just like, okay, yeah, every 3 or 4 months we get a film.
I mean, I'm not sure we've seen one studio do with quite this level of ambition before.
No.
But we have seen this kind of cycle before. You go back to the 50s and the 60s, and we were just awash with westerns, for example. And now it's relatively rare that a western comes out, and then we get to the sort of the late 70s and the 80s, and Star Wars hits, and then we were awash with TV shows, like Buck Rogers, and all of these things that were trying to cash in on the space opera fantasy of Star Wars, and now I think we're very much in that area with superheroes that. People have seen how popular they can be, and for the next few years we're going to be hit with so much of them. But I think they're just going to go the way of the Western at some point, whereas we'll still have them. They are a big part of pop culture, but I don't think they're going to be as absolutely dominant as they seem to be at the moment.
Yeah, they do seem to be everywhere. So my first prediction, how wrong can I be? I think VR gaming is going to take off to a level that we've not seen. At the moment, VR headsets, the price is coming down. When I was at university, this is going back a few years, the virtual reality was very, very, very basic. It was horrific, and there was no games as such. It was just absolute rubbish. Now, you're getting headsets you can buy, but they're still fairly expensive. I think the price of the technology will come down. I think the gaming experience will improve. And I think we're going to have the equivalent of MMOs, but with VR gaming.
Yeah.
So there's a new game that's just come out now that looks good for what it is, but it's still relatively basic, I would say. And this is the Star Trek Enterprise bridge game.
Bridge simulator, yeah.
Yeah, so 4 people with headsets and controllers take a different station on the bridge, play together cooperatively, piloting a starship, and go out and do things. It looks amazing, really, really clever. It's the first kind of equivalent of... Do you remember back in the day, you'd have Doom or something, and you'd have teams that would... I'm trying to come to another game where you'd have national competitions and then international kind of gaming sessions, and I know
there was Counter-Strike, there was Quake, there was all sorts of them.
And you'd have these very big tournaments with lots of people watching and a lot of money involved and sponsorship, and now you get Twitch, of course, people watching people game live and so on. I think VR gaming is going to take off in that area where you'll have people playing head to head, you'll have people watching other people play in tournaments and competitions. I think gaming will still be available in the same way as we have it now for those who don't use VR, don't want to, but I think it'll become a more common staple in every household. Like, everyone's got a DVD player now. 20 years ago, they were very expensive, very, very... Now you can get one for about £30, I think, if you really want, for a DVD player. Or they come in other things now. They're that cheap. Whereas before they were very expensive. That's my first prediction.
I think have you used a modern VR headset? By the way?
No, I wear glasses full time, and I don't know how it will work without my glasses on.
You'll be fine, because you can adjust so you wouldn't be able to wear your glasses, but you can adjust the focus of the lenses in there.
Right.
Because obviously, so they need to have very powerful lenses in them, because the screens that you're looking at are literally just a couple of centimeters away from your face.
Yeah.
So for anybody to be able to pull that into focus, you need special lenses. So you would just have to adjust them, and you would be fine. So there's something. So VR is very interesting. So I'm really positive about VR. I've used it. I don't own a set, but I've used it quite a lot in various different settings. And until you use it, you can't express how good it is, because it's not just like another another fancy controller or the next console that just happens to have better graphics in it or something like that. When you put that headset on, even if the graphics aren't like absolutely amazing, it's sufficient at a very kind of primitive level to absolutely convince your brain that you're there in that environment.
Yeah.
It's, at least for me and a lot of the people that I've spoken to, 100% feels like you're there inside that world that they've created.
Cool.
And that's an amazing experience. It feels absolutely incredible. And like I say, it isn't just like a slightly better console. It tricks your brain into thinking something that you've never been in a position to experience before. It's absolutely extraordinary. At the same time, the thing that I think might potentially doom it is the fact that actually gaming has tended to become more casual over time. Like, people will play games on their phone whilst watching the TV and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And actually, with the thing with a VR headset is it completely isolates you from your environment. There's nothing you can be doing whilst you have a VR headset on. And because of that kind of absolute isolation and 100% commitment to being in that game, in that world, that's the thing about it that makes me wonder whether it will become that huge. One of the things that I think prevented 3D TVs from taking off, apart from the fact that I'm the only person that loves 3D movies,
was Gav, I think, from the side.
Yeah,
that's it.
Was the fact that you had to, even at home, you had to have those glasses on, and that prevented you from really being able to do anything except for look at the screen and things. So I really, really hope it takes off. It deserves to be huge, but I'm just not sure whether the commitment that you need, I don't mean financially, but the commitment that you need in terms of you have to be 100% in there and in that world is a little bit much for gaming that's become quite casual. But it's also interesting that you talk about, e-gaming and stuff like that. And I don't know, have you ever played Overwatch?
No, but I'm aware of it. I know what it is.
Yeah, so it's a first-person shooter done by ActiBliz,
yes,
who did World of Warcraft and things like that. It's very good, very, 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 very well-designed game. Lots and lots of fun, and it's designed to appeal to not just hardcore. It's not like Call of Duty where you're going around, killing people. It's really bright and colourful. The locations are really interesting. They've deliberately picked lots of international locations as well. And they've just announced that Activision Blizzard have just announced their own specific esports league for Overwatch.
Right.
And to play in that game, in that league, so to basically get to stand up a team and compete, the entrance fee is $20 million.
What?
And yeah. So to get a professional team together, the subscription that you need to pay to Blizzard to get a seat at their table and compete commercially within this league is $20 million. It's absolutely insane.
How many people can be in the league?
So when I say $20 million, that's for you to submit a team.
Yeah.
Because it's a team game. It's purely a team game. So it's normally 6 versus 6. And they've, given that it's that price, they've signed up already about 8 teams.
What?
And that just goes to show you how big this is expected to be. They're expecting this to compete with maybe not football, but other professional sport. Wimbledon ended today. I guess they're expecting it to be at least as big as Wimbledon or something like that.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Wow. The other kind of prediction at the same time as me talking about the extent of gaming taking off is I think it'll be as strong as it is now, if not stronger. The other side of that coin is board gaming. 20 years ago, tabletop gaming was rubbish. Me growing up, I hated tabletop gaming because it was all crap. Apart from a few games like Talisman which I played a lot when I was kind of 18, 19, that sort of age.
No, well, I played it a lot when I was that age, and I actually played it recently.
Yeah.
And it's not as much fun as I remember it being, I have to say.
But the number of games available now is incredible. We played some last time we were together in February. We played some great games. I think that will still continue, because I know you're talking about the immersiveness of VR where you can only do one thing, but it's the group thing of playing a tabletop game together. It's the physical activity. For all our stuff that we do online, there's not a knee-jerk sort of response the other way, but I think people still want to do things together collectively, whether it's tabletop
100%.
gaming or going to a concert or going to the cinema together or whatever it might be. There's a lot more stuff to do with other people in person, and tabletop gaming, it's just fantastic now.
Yeah, tabletop gaming is about the shared experience, and there's so much variety out there. And you're talking about immersiveness. Probably the most immersive experience I've ever had of a gaming is us playing Battlestar Galactica back in the last 2 Februaries, where it doesn't matter that you're all sitting around a kitchen table, and it doesn't matter that you're on a board and you're moving pieces around. As far as I was concerned, we were on board the Galactica and our backs were.
But imagine if we all played that with VR headsets around that table.
It couldn't get any better. It couldn't be any more immersive than it was. I really believe that, because everybody was just so into it.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. So I think that will still continue. I don't think that's going to go anywhere in 10 years' time. I think those kind of tournaments in the same way will continue. I don't think you'll quite get the cost and the level that you've just been talking about, but I think its popularity will continue to grow. And there might be more YouTube channels focused on that sort of game, because there are a few now, but not many.
Yeah, it's interesting. As somebody that's never really watched, I've never really been a big fan of sport. It's just never been a big part of my life. But as somebody that's really, really into games, I've tried to watch some of these gaming tournaments.
Yeah.
And I just don't. I just can't watch them. It would be the equivalent of me like watching a game of football or something like that. I can't. I enjoy playing the games, but actually, when you kind of turn it into a sport, it doesn't. I just don't really get why I would want to be watching that. And I know that it's huge in some countries, particularly in South Korea. But I just kind of wonder whether the people that they're trying to get to watch it are the sorts of people that wouldn't be into watching it. But clearly they're gambling a lot of money on me being completely wrong. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
So, do you have any more predictions for the future?
I've got a very boring one, which is we're going to see the death of physical media. I think the days of going and buying a physical box will be gone within 10 years' time. Everything will be subscription and everything will be streaming. You won't be able to, when you get your, whatever the new version of the Xbox is going to be.
Yeah.
You won't be buying physical games with it. You'll just be getting ownership of these games, and you'll just download them off the internet, and that will be it. I don't think there will be such a thing as Blu-ray anymore, or any of that. I don't know what you think to that, but it just seems like that's going to completely die out.
I think it's strange. So Blu-ray is. I don't own a Blu-ray player or a Blu-ray single disc. So and I know the quality is better and all this kind of thing, but I think you could be right. I think those different levels of quality will still be available. So now, if I want to go onto Amazon app through my TV and I want to buy a film to watch or rent a film, there's the option to watch it in SD or high definition. And I think there'll be like a third version there at some point. There'll be like, super blue HD quasi futuristic tech version, which will be a couple of quid more expensive. And I think that's what you're going to be getting in future. Mm-hmm. And I think we'll start getting more adverts on TV for those kind of things, in terms of watch Captain America now, so-and-so. You've seen it at the cinema, now you can buy it. I mean, we get it at the moment with some things, but I think we'll get more of it now in the future, saying, download it on this, and this, where it used to be, buy the DVD in this shop, and this shop, available on the high street. I think that's going to go. CDs, I think that would completely go. I have bought an occasional CD recently, but I'd say 80% of the music I've bought in the last 5 years has been digital only, because I don't actually want the physical thing cluttering up the house anymore. I'm not interested in the inlay cards anymore or the artwork. Or if I was, I'd buy the deluxe version, and then I've got the physical digital book to flick through, which has the same stuff on, if I really wanted that. And I can get bonus videos of stuff on the super version of the CD, music videos. I think you're right. I think CDs will go for sure. Vinyl, I think, will probably continue as something that has grown in the last few years. I don't think anything's going to come back. I don't think cassettes are suddenly going to make a comeback. Or 8 tracks, which is before my time.
Yeah.
But DVDs, perhaps. I think you could be right that they'll just stop. Games, I'm not sure. I don't know. We'd all have to go into completely unlimited kind of download capacity, and broadband providers have to get a lot better than they are at the moment. And they move very slowly, as we know. Some parts of the country don't have broadband. The broadband's the same, almost like dial-up used to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. But if we know anything based on the last 10 years, it's going to be an interesting 10 years for geeks.
Oh yeah. The amount of content that's coming out is constantly surprising us. So my other prediction is, this is a sort of I don't think there'll be anything. I'm not sure there's going to be a new tech, as it were. So I've said, VR gaming perhaps, but I don't think there's going to be something that's going to transform gaming or geekdom in the way that the tablet did or the games console did. I don't think there's going to be something that's going to be new. Like, you look at the market now and everybody's trying to find something unique or different, and it's really, really hard to find the next kind of what's missing thing. I think we get evolutions now rather than something new. I mean, if you look at Apple, they're constantly trying to find the next thing. The amount of money they and Google pour into various technologies is phenomenal. They tried to do the Apple Glass, remember? And that was a dodo from day one. I said it was a turkey. Apart from some...
You're talking about Google Glass, I think.
Sorry, yes, Google Glass. I mean, that was such a turkey. Apart from a couple of really boring applications that could actually save lives and help people in a business scenario, it was never going to be an everyday thing. It was creepy. I mean, if you're wearing Google glasses and you're a firefighter, and on the display where it's filled with smoke, you can't see anything, but the glass is showing you a display of the building that you're in, so you can navigate without actually seeing, that's fantastic. If you're a doctor operating and you don't want anybody in the room with you, but you can stream what you're seeing through your Google Glass to a classroom somewhere else where they can watch what you're doing and learn from it, that's fantastic. Some of these are really quite boring but very interesting scenarios, but everyday wear, that was never going to happen. It's too much privacy and security. And
it's interesting. It's difficult to see, given that we have these phones which are connected to the internet and are generally, super fast, and you can watch any film that you want, at a moment's notice. It is difficult to kind of see how things will get better than that. How can that possibly evolve? It's difficult to predict. I'm not sure. But again, going back to YouTube, that people could have probably predicted YouTube and Netflix, but probably what we couldn't have done is predicted how people would use YouTube. Earning millions and millions just by talking to people on the internet. And I think that will be the interesting thing. I'm sure there might not be a revolution in technology. I'm sure there'll be an interesting evolution. I think that as things like AI progresses, digital assistants and, the predictive power of computers will be very interesting. But it's not... the interesting thing is to see how people react to that and what new ways of creating things come out of that rather than the technology itself.
Yeah.
But we'll discuss this, in 2027.
Do you have any more predictions then?
I don't think so. That was pretty much all of mine, I think.
It is hard. Some of it, as you say, we'd be able to predict because it's an evolution. or a slightly different way of it. But it's when people take content or a medium and do something unique with it that catches on. That's the kind of the thing that we don't always see coming, and the industries don't see coming either. They think it's going to spell the doom sometimes, and it turns out not to be. It just becomes something completely different. I mean, digital radio is taken off in a way that I didn't really think it would, to the fact where you can get all sorts of very, very specific but very niche music stations. But there again, because the audience is around the world, it's not a case of I need to get 5,000 listeners in the UK. It's like, okay, I've got 50,000 listeners around the world. They all listen to my funk and soul whatever, radio station, and we get this many downloads a month and blah blah blah. And so it's crossing boundaries is something that's changing, and it has been for a long time.
We'll find out. So do write in and tell us how wrong you think we were. Yes,
if you think of anything that you think is going to be coming up in 10 years, or a thing that you would like to see, perhaps, that an evolution of something, perhaps. So you can come onto our Facebook group, Grouchy Old Geeks, there, and join in the conversation. You can email us, grouchyoldgeeks@gmail.com. And yes, don't forget to support Geek Syndicate and all of the podcasts on the Geek Syndicate feed on iTunes by going to the Patreon page, since we mentioned Patreon as a new kind of thing. So that would be nice too.
Cool.
So I guess all it leaves me to say is it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Good night.
Good night.